Pornography has infected every aspect of our culture, from the medium you consume to the social spaces that we make. It's either pornography being shilled by OnlyFans models or scams.
Look at you gripping daddy. Look at you gripping daddy.
From the memes that we use, right? We all know the Yes King audio. We all know the Animal Crossing Anka meme, right? Pornography has infected the language we use, the way that we use things, right? It's gotten so bad that, let's be honest, if someone has a chair near a bed, people call it a cuck chair. If someone tries to have a friendly relationship with their daughter, the first thing that people say is, oh, that's sweet. No, they think about some sexual encounter, right? Everything has become so infected with pornography, even our real lives, right? And I think people don't really actively think about how pervasive it is and how it's corroded a lot of the aspects of society. And I think it's gotten significantly worse from in the past, right? I think in the past, you can always find scenarios of like dirty jokes and even in cartoon episodes or TV shows. But to some degree, it was only in that medium, right? It only infected television to some degree, or maybe a dirty joke by a friend here and there. But the reality is, pornography is so widely available to everyone, and kids can't really escape it anymore. When I was growing up, pornography was to some degree limited because the internet wasn't all encompassing. I could still go outside, I could still talk to my friends, I could still be a kid. But now most of the entertainment that kids have is through the internet. How often do they have weird thumbnails like SpongeBob and Punani are pregnant? Or Minecraft characters that have big asses and big breasts and they're hypersexualized. From even the kids show showing more explicit content, right? In the past, maybe a joke or two was made, but now it almost seems like it's constantly pushed. It's constantly shown to kids, right? Especially, I mean, one perfect example is the feet things that a lot of Nickelodeon shows have, right? Feet are constantly shown, right? And not knowing the history behind that, it kind of tells you that people that are kind of creating these things, right, want to make sexual content. So now kids can't escape this. They're engrossed to this behavior. They're engrossed in a culture where pornography and sexual content is so common, right? And what does that do to an entire generation of young people that don't have the avenue that I had when I was a younger person, right? When I was a young person, they didn't know it was so sexual. I still had my real life. If I went outside, kids weren't talking about Mia Khalifa or Danny Phantom's mom having a fat ass. It was separated, right? Kids were still allowed to be kids. Kids still had a safe space to be children. But those spaces now have been encompassed and have been taken over by sex and sexuality and gooners and so on and so forth. What happens to the young person when the content they're constantly pushed is about sex? They become gooners, right? They become hyper fixated with one aspect of life, right? And why is that, right? From a young age, they get exposed, they accidentally see pornography, and then society tells you it's perfectly fine to masturbate. Society tells you it's perfectly fine to watch porn because it helps your prostate or makes you feel a little bit better, right? Telling young people to do this, but they're trying to understand their own body, and they're living in probably one of the most strangest times in their lives, right? Where they're transitioning from a child to an adult, and the hormones are changing. And that's probably the most insecure time period in your whole life, right? You're insecure about your own body, insecure about your friends, their social dynamics are changing. It's a very strange time. Pornography becomes an outlet for all that frustration, all that anxiety, all those depression, all that fear you have. If I can just touch my hog, yang my hog, it's an avenue for me to escape the reality of being uncomfortable, right? People start using that as a crutch to deal with all their social problems. You're having a bad day, masturbate. You're sad, masturbate. Your parents yelled at you, masturbate. You're angry, masturbate. That's the only way they learn to solve problems, right? The only way you can solve your issues now is through touching your wiener, okay? And that's not a good way for people, for human beings to learn how to be an adult. They become stunted in a lot of other ways, right? If you don't have that awkward conversation and get rejected by the girl you like from an early age, if you never learn that lesson, how to handle rejection or how to talk to girls or how to be in uncomfortable scenarios, you become stunted as a person. Those socially stunted people, every single one of us knows someone like that. The guys that are, have like a hoodie and they only talk about sex. When you just are talking to them and talking about, I don't know, a TV show, right? The first, like a cartoon show about like SpongeBob, I don't know. And the first thing they say is, man, if Sandy was real, man, I would be inside those cheeks. Or they see a girl passing by, and the first comment they make is like, man, can you imagine if you could stop time? Or can you imagine if you just got naked right now? What would you do? Every single conversation just devolves to sex. They're weird, they're odd, and they're strange, right? Are we really surprised that young girls don't want to hang out with those guys, right? So what are the social consequences? You can tell me, hey, okay, we got more creeps, we have more gooners. Is that really such a bad thing? And I would say that the consequences are much deeper than that, right? We can see that by seeing how often Zoomers form relationships. How often do Zoomers form friendships? The increased rates of depression, the increased rates of anxiety, of lack of attention span. Zoomers' brains are fried. They grew up with a culture that embraced the sexual revolution and embraced pornography. Sex used to be one of the driving factors to form relationships, but when you don't need sex to have sexual satisfaction, then that destroys the foundation of why people want to make relationships. And I think from a fundamental perspective, pornography changes people's mind, right? It distorts what they want and how often they want it, right? Studies, I can go to studies after studies after studies, but TLDR for a lot of these studies. Gray matter gets reduced. Connections to the right striatum have been shown to have weaker connections. And that part of your brain is connected with social skills, motor skills, and the reward system in your brain, right? Those same effects have been seen through drug addicts, specifically like cocaine addiction. People that watch pornography, even in moderate usage, right? For them to feel the same hit they did from, gooning the first time, and to have that same feeling and reaction, they can never have it, right? So they need to see more and intense things. So what did that tell you to society? 20 years ago, incest wasn't a thing, okay? There's a reason why people make weird jokes about stepbrothers and feel really uncomfortable about dads or moms being close to their children, and people having like this weird reaction, like, are they doing something behind their back that's inappropriate? This wasn't the norm in the past, but pornography has made this the new norm, right? The reason there's been a rise with like more kinky behavior in just average people, like choking, BDSM, inflation, furry, or just consensual, non-consensual stuff, is because pornography has pushed this to the masses. Porn always has to do everything to grab more attention from the masses. And the only way it can do this is by pushing things to the extreme again and again and again. The same reason some goth girl wants you to call her daddy is because she saw this through porn, okay? The same reason why those gooners constantly make weird comments about hypothetical scenarios that are impossible to see is because porn has done that.
Oh, Dylan, I'm so glad to see you. Please help me.
Did you get my cereal?
They're frozen vegetables. Will you put them away? Your brother's doing unspeakable things to me.
What the fuck? You didn't get my cereal?
Porn constantly pushes the boundary up to the oddity and the strange and the macabre and just the obscure, right? So the reason why in this entire generation their dicks don't work and they have higher rates of erectile dysfunction, or it's more difficult for men to be more aroused, or it's more difficult for men to be more aroused with their own partner. The higher rates of insecurity that men have with their own dick, or the same reason why women feel more insecure about their own body, right? It's because we're making the fantasy of pornography be the real world, be the standard that we use to talk about sex and intimacy. It's something that is so important to humanity, right? We've allowed the most perverse incentives to take over society. So what's the final message? You need to stop beating your meat. You need to stop touching yourself. You need to stop thinking that if you quit right now, your balls are going to become so heavy because all you're going to think about is, I have to think about, I have to release this urge. It's taking me over. I have to masturbate. That's not the truth, right? When you stop masturbating, you stop watching porn, you stop thinking about porn, and you stop being obsessed with porn. And the reason why that's important is because it lets you focus on the other aspects of your life that matter, like enjoying the trees outside, or going outside, or trying to form real connections. The easy access to this dopamine has changed the fundamentals of this world, right? And the consequences, I don't think have been fully shown yet. I think the same attitude we had about tobacco and the consequences, of higher rates of cancer are going to be shown in the future when it comes to pornography. The stigma of pornography will come back because we will see what pornography has allowed. And let's be honest, the world that pornography has allowed is awful. Is it really okay for an 18-year-old girl, and the first thing that people comment is, when is she gonna make an OnlyFans? Is that really the world that we want to support and live in?